Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into this week's PortalFuse report?
Always ready to see what Microsoft has in store for us.
Let's jump right in. The report covers February 19th to the 25th, and it looks like Edge is taking center stage this time with a few CVEs.
Yeah, there are a handful that we need to be aware of.
Right, so starting with CVE 2025-24.1, this is a security feature bypass vulnerability.
And while it does require local access and user interaction, the fact that the attack complexity is rated as high is concerning.
So what does that mean in practical terms?
Well, it allows an attacker to bypass those user gesture requirements, so we could see some unexpected behavior and potentially even some unauthorized actions.
So definitely something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. But the good news is Microsoft's already got a fix out there. Version 133.3065.69 of Edge addresses this vulnerability.
Okay, so updating Edge is a priority then.
Absolutely. Moving on to CVE 2025-1426, this is a use-after-free vulnerability in the network component.
And this one originates from Chromium open source software, right?
That's right. And since Edge is built on Chromium, it's directly impacted. These use-after-free vulnerabilities, they can be a bit tricky.
How so?
Basically, they allow an attacker to access memory that's already been freed up. This could lead to all sorts of trouble, including potential code execution.
That sounds pretty serious.
It can be. Fortunately, Microsoft was quick to address this one too. Edge version 133.3065/82, which was released on February 21st, contains the fix.
Okay, so it seems like keeping Edge up to date is going to be a recurring theme here.
You got it. And speaking of updates, we have CVE 2025-130A6, a heap buffer overflow in the GPU.
Another one stemming from Chromium, huh?
That's right. It seems like they've had a bit of a rough week over there.
I'm sensing a pattern here.
Don't worry, though. Once again, the same Edge version, 133.3065.82, takes care of this one, too.
All right, that's 3 down. What's the last CVE we need to know about for Edge?
The last one is CDE 2025-0999. This one involves a heap buffer overflow in, you guessed it, the V8 engine.
Right, the JavaScript engine Chromium uses.
Exactly. And as we've established, Edge is built on Chromium, so this vulnerability directly affects it. And as you know, heap buffer overflows can be really problematic.
Everything from data corruption to code execution.
You got it.
So, to nobody's surprise, the solution here is an update to Edge version 133.0.3065.82.
That's right. This update really covers a lot of ground.
Looks like patching Edge is priority number 1 this week then. What about these KB articles mentioned in the report?
Yeah, let's switch gears and talk about those. We'll start with KB 5052.077 for Windows 10, version 22H2.
This is a preview update, right? Focused on quality improvements, not security fixes.
That's correct. There are a few key highlights. First, there are some daylight saving time changes for Paraguay.
Important for anyone with systems operating in that region.
Definitely. And then there are some fixes for the Chinese input method editor.
Okay, and anything else notable?
Yeah, there are a couple of issues addressed with the desktop window manager, specifically DWM.exe, and some problems with Open Secure Shell or Open SSH, as most people know it.
So pretty diverse set of fixes in this update. Anything else we need to know?
Well, it also includes the servicing stack update KB 5052916.
Right, those servicing stack updates are essential for smooth Windows updates down the line.
Exactly. Moving on, we have KB 5053143, which is a safe OS dynamic update for Windows 11 version 24H2 and Windows Server 2025.
Interesting. And what does this update focus on?
This one specifically targets the Windows recovery environment.
So not something we push out to every device, but more of a just-in-case type of update.
Exactly. Good to have in place if we ever need to perform a system recovery.
And it's accessible through all the usual channels, right? Windows Update, the Update Catalog, WSUS.
That's right. Plenty of deployment options there.
Great. What's the last KB article we need to cover?
The last one is KB 5052094. This one's a preview update for Windows 11 versions 22H2 and 23H2.
And this one is packed with new features and improvements, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a pretty long list. There are updates to the taskbar, Windows Spotlight, the lock screen. Narrator gets some updates, and there are some for File Explorer, too.
So a lot of UI changes then.
Quite a few. There are also fixes for some issues with the Start menu.
The Start menu. Always a source of fun, isn't it?
You said it. And it also addresses some problems with mouse color settings.
Interesting. So a lot of user-facing improvements in this update.
Yeah, lots of little things to make the user experience smoother. And of course, it includes the servicing stack update, KB 5052107.
Always good to keep those servicing stacks up to date. All right, so that covers all the CVEs and KB articles for this week. But before we move on, I think we should touch on those known issues mentioned in the report.
Agreed. Those can often be the things that trip us up.
The first one involves a compatibility issue between certain Citrix components and the January 2025 Windows security update.
Yes, this is a tricky one. Basically, it prevents that security update from installing correctly. It looks like the Citrix session recording agent, specifically version 24.11, is the main culprit.
That's not good. Is there a workaround available?
Thankfully, yes. Citrix has documented the issue and provided a workaround.
That's good to know.
Definitely something to keep in mind if you're managing systems that use those specific Citrix components.
Absolutely. What's the other known issue we need to be aware of?
The second known issue involves the SystemGuard Runtime Monitor Broker Service, specifically an error related to strrmbroker.exe.
I think I've seen that error pop up a few times. Never really thought much of it.
It's one of those things that looks more alarming than it actually is. This error affects devices that have installed Windows updates from January 14th, 2025 onwards.
So fairly recent updates then.
That's right. And while it might look concerning, it doesn't actually affect system performance or security.
So what is this strrmbroker.exe then?
It seems to be a legacy service, originally related to Microsoft Defender, but it's not actively used anymore. So the service itself is harmless, but the error message it throws can be a bit annoying.
So what's the solution? Disable the service.
Exactly. Disabling the service is a safe and effective workaround. And it's worth noting that future Windows updates are expected to address this permanently. So there's no need to manually uninstall or remove anything related to this service. Just disable it for now and wait for the official fix.
Sounds like a plan. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. CVEs, KB articles, known issues. It's a lot to process.
It is. But that's the world we live in as system admins.
What do you think are the key takeaways from this part of the report?
Well, it underscores just how interconnected our systems are. A vulnerability in one component can have ripple effects across the entire ecosystem.
And it highlights the importance of staying informed. Resources like the PortalFuse report are invaluable for keeping us up to date on the latest threats and issues.
Definitely. Knowledge is power, especially in the world of IT security.
Well said. Ready to move on to part 2 and dig a little deeper into the implications of all this for sysadmins.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. You know those quality improvements in KB 5ECL 52077 for Windows 10? They're kind of interesting. Those daylight saving time changes and the fixes for the Chinese input method editor, they show that Microsoft is focusing on more than just patching vulnerabilities.
It's like they're finally paying attention to those smaller details that can really impact users.
Exactly. And happier users mean fewer support tickets for us.
Always a win in my book. But we can't forget about those security concerns. That Citrix compatibility issue is a prime example of why we can't just blindly apply updates.
No kidding. It really highlights the importance of thorough testing, especially in complex environments.
Absolutely. Having a solid testing environment that mirrors our production setup is crucial. It's like having a safety net.
Couldn't agree more. And the time we save by avoiding those post-update fire drills is invaluable. It's so true. Okay. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about those safe OS dynamic updates for Windows 11 and Windows Server 2025. What's the deal with focusing on the recovery environment?
It's all about resilience. Think of it this way. We spend so much time hardening our systems against attacks. But what happens when something goes wrong?
A corrupted system file, a hardware failure. Those things can happen.
Precisely. And that's when a robust recovery environment becomes essential. These dynamic updates ensure that our recovery tools are up to date and ready to go when we need them.
It's like having a spare tire in your car. You hope you never need it, but when you do, you're glad it's there.
Perfect analogy. Now let's move on to KB 5052094 for Windows 11. This one seems to be packed with new features and improvements. Lots of user-facing changes.
The Taskbar, Windows Spotlight, the lock screen, narrator, even File Explorer. It's a pretty extensive list.
It is. Microsoft is really putting a lot of effort into refining the user experience with this one.
I'm always a little cautious about big UI changes, but hopefully these will be well received. I hear you, but I think most of these changes are aimed at making things more intuitive and efficient.
Fingers crossed. Now remember that SystemGuard Runtime Monitor Broker Service error we talked about. It seems like a bit of a phantom issue.
It is, a harmless relic of the past. The service itself isn't needed anymore, but the error message can still be confusing.
So disabling the service is the way to go for now.
That's right. It's a safe and easy workaround. And luckily, Microsoft is planning to address this issue permanently in a future update. So we can just disable it and wait for the official fix.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. What are your overall thoughts on what we've seen so far?
It just reinforces how crucial it is to stay vigilant and adaptable as system administrators. There's always something new to learn, some new challenge to tackle.
That's for sure. And resources like the PortalFuse report are really helpful in keeping us informed.
Agreed. It's all about working smarter, not harder. We need to utilize the tools and information available to us to make informed decisions for our environments.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Ready to move on to our final thoughts and wrap up this deep dive.
Absolutely, let's do it.
So, as we wrap things up, what's the main takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about after listening to this deep dive?
I think it's the constant evolution of security that we see. These CVEs, the KB articles, the known issues, they're not isolated incidents. They're all part of an ongoing cycle, right? You have challenges, you find solutions, and then new challenges pop up.
It's a never-ending game, isn't it? And as system admins, we're right in the middle of it.
We are, and that means we need to be adaptable. We need to keep learning, keep evolving our strategies. If we just react to threats, we're always going to be a step behind.
So true. What are some things that stood out to you from this PortalFuse report?
I was really interested in how Microsoft seems to be balancing security improvements with enhancements to the user experience. We saw that with those quality of life fixes in KB 5052077 for Windows 10, and then all those UI changes in KB 5052094 for Windows 11.
It's a good point. Security is obviously paramount, but we can't forget about the people who actually use these systems every day.
Exactly. Happy users mean fewer headaches for everyone involved.
And I think it's safe to say we all agree on that. Now, before we say goodbye, any parting words of wisdom for our fellow sysadmins out there?
I would say stay curious, stay informed. The threat landscape is constantly changing, so we need to be constantly learning.
And of course, don't underestimate the importance of good documentation.
Absolutely. A well-documented system is a well-managed system. It can save you so much time and trouble down the road.
Well said. Well, that concludes our deep dive into this week's PortalFuse Security Update Report. We covered a lot of ground today.
We did, but it's all crucial information for anyone managing Windows environments.
As always, we encourage everyone to check out the PortalFuse website for more in-depth information. And remember, new threats and new challenges emerge every day, so stay vigilant, stay secure, and keep those systems running smoothly.
Until next time, happy administrating.